Hello everyone, it's Jen. Welcome back to another project for Heffy Doodle. Today I'm creating two fall cards using the new release stamp set called Dear to Me. So sweet with the three deer, the little mouse, and the mushroom, and I'll be using all the images today. I also have the coordinating dies that go with the stamp set. Everything I use today will be in the description box below in case you want to click on over to see anything up close. So let's jump into the coloring. I'm going to color the deer and the birch tree with you. So for the white area of the deer, I'm using W3 as my darkest marker, W00 as the lightest, and then I'm blending that out with the 0. And I did use the W00 for most of the image, but that 0 will push back that color a little bit. I used E04 for the little blush on my deer. I do like that color for animals or critters. So for the body of the deer, I'm doing a 3-color blend. I'm using E37 as my darkest, E34 as my midtone, and E31 as my lightest. I am going in with my darkest marker here, and this video, the coloring portion is sped up ×2, so you could see I was kind of taking my time outlining where I wanted those darkest shadows to be. Now, if you'd like to see all the colors, I do have a color map at the end of this video and on the corresponding blog over on Heffy Doodle, so you can see those colors listed out. But now I'm just bringing in that E34, my midtone, and I'm just going to blend out that darkest area, leaving a little bit of area for the highlight on the front leg with my E31, and then on the body, and then just a little bit on the tips of the ears and the top of the head. Now I did use the E31 to kind of blend out the rest of those colors. Sometimes I like to do that and sometimes I don't. It just depends on how good of a blend I'm getting. For the hooves and the nose, I'm using E49. And then I'm going to bring in my white gel pen. This is a size 10. And I'm just going to add the little dots on his rear end or her rear end. So for the birch tree, I'm using a 3-color blend as well. And my darkest color is a C5, which is quite dark. But I want there to be a lot of contrast. So I want those little notches in the birch tree to really stand out. And then I'm going to emphasize some of the other areas. And I'm also sort of having a darker highlight. Well, if it's darker, it's not a highlight, but having a darker area to that right-hand side of the birch tree. So bringing in that C3 to blend out that C5, and then adding the C3 to areas where I didn't have any color at all. And then I'm going to push back that color or blend it out with the C1 and make sure I outline the entire tree here. I'm also, if you noticed where that little notch comes out to the right-hand side, I added quite a bit of that C1 just coming towards that, just to add a little bit of extra color to that area, and then I'm blending it all out with the colorless blender. So I'm going to grab my coordinating dies here and run these through my Big Shot, my die cutting machine, and then we can jump into card number 1. So I am creating 2 cards very similar. The first I'm going to do is a mini slimline card. I like to do mine 3x6. I'm going to show you how I did the backgrounds. I did them the same for both of the cards. So I'm starting off with the Fossilized Amber, which is a gorgeous rich yellow color. Then I'm coming in with Abandoned Coral. And then I'll just add a little bit of red with Candied Apple on the top. Now I'm not worried about a smooth blend for this first coat. I just want to get the paper nice and saturated and my colors down. I was having a bit of trouble here keeping my fingers out of the ink. So you'll see here in a second I do bring in a little scrap cardstock to make sure I don't get any fingerprints on my background here. But I'm just adding that Candied Apple to the top of that. And I'm only going to actually use that one once. I am going to bring in the Fossilized Amber again and kind of mix that with the abandoned coral and then bringing the abandoned coral back in to mix that downwards towards the fossilized amber and then blending in that candied apple at the top. So this is going to give me a really pretty autumn background. So I have all my ink blending done. I am going to use a spritzer here once I get my inks packed away. And I'm just going to spritz some water and let that sit for a little bit. I do kind of skip forward that part and just take my microfiber cloth and pick up that water. It'll give a little bit of interest to the background. And then I'm bringing in the new Falling Leaves stencil. And I'm just using the ink left over on my brushes. So using the candy apple to the top and then the abandoned coral and fossilized amber. This is really going to give just a soft impression of those leaves to the background. You could also use Versamark ink if you didn't want to use the colored inks for that, and that will also give you a tone on tone. So for the bottom area of the card, I decided to do something a little different, and I'm using the really gorgeous maroon colored Heffy Doodle cardstock. I tried it when I was kind of composing the cards with green, and I just felt like it didn't quite go right for the amber color and that coral color that I have in the background. So I really liked how this choice of the burgundy or the maroon really played into the fall theme. So I'm adding 2 of the birch trees to the left-hand side, and I'll trim those off. So this card is kind of like the bottom of a forest, just kind of depicting the bottom area of those trees and then the deer. I'm doing 2 cards because I wanted to use all the deer. They're just so sweet. I love this little one laying down. Now I am adding some of the green grass to the back just to kind of fill in my scene. So if you did want to use green, it would totally work for the grass if you wanted to have more of a grass, but I was kind of going for that dark kind of forest bedding look with this set of cards. So I added the little stump from the set. I'm going to add the rest of my grass here. Now the grass doesn't come in this stamp set. It is from another Heffy Doodle stamp set, which I will link below. I played around with the idea of adding another piece of that birch tree, but they weren't quite long enough to match the ones going off the card to the left, so I decided to leave that out. But if you wanted to color up another one, I think it would look really great to have another one on that right hand side. I'm going to add a couple of the mushrooms here in the stamp set. They are really sweet. I colored those ones up using my E70 markers just to have them a little bit different from the stump and the deer. And now that I have those in place, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere this second deer. I love how her little face is kind of pointing upwards. And then I'm going to add the mouse onto the top of my stump facing the deer looking backwards. I already stamped out my sentiment. For this card I'm really quite fond of you. I love that. I stamped it out on some white cardstock with some black ink. And then I'm just going to add some black glaze pen to the eyes and the noses. And this just gives a really nice raised effect and just darkens up those eyes since I've gone over them with some coloring. So that's the first card, the mini Slimline. And like I said, I wanted to use all the deer, so I thought I'd make 2 cards for you today. So this is a standard American A2 size card at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I wanted to show you how you could use the birch trees to fill out one of those portrait-sized A2 cards. So really quite versatile. I love the birch trees. They're perfect for fall. They're also great for winter scene cards. So don't put this stamp set away for Christmas or winter. The design team has made some beautiful winter-themed projects with it. If you want to go check it out over on Instagram or on the blog, or also there's the Heffy Doodlers Facebook group. So now I've got my birch trees, and notice how I have two of the wider birch trees. I turned one the other way, so that little notch, there's one closer to the bottom and then on the other one closer to the top. So it just allows you to stretch your stamp and make it look like it's actually 3 different stamps when it's only 2. And again, I'm going to add the grass here just behind the maroon or burgundy cardstock, and I did get a little bit of glue on there. I'm trying to rub it off with my finger. Now normally it will dry clear, but it was kind of a little bit of a clumpy piece, but I will fix that near the end, so I'll show you a trick for that. So this stamp set also has a bunch of leaves, which I love, so you can have them on the birch trees. I'm just going to kind of tuck those behind the birch trees so they look natural, like they're coming out from those trees, or attached to them, I guess would be a better way to say that. There's one facing down and one facing up, so I'm just going to make sure I have one of each. And then for the slim birch tree, I'm going to add a single leaf there to the right hand side, and it does get stuck on my finger, so I just need to add a little bit more glue and get that into place. So now I'm just going to trim off the top of my birch trees. So you could definitely tuck these down if you want to see the tops of them. I kind of like them coming off the page, so I chose to do that again for this card. So I'm going to have the larger deer here in between where the opening is, and then I'm going to have the little deer a little bit closer to those 2 birch trees to the right hand side. And I think it just looks so sweet. It's like that little deer is looking up towards the larger deer. Now for this one, I'm using the sentiment, "Well, hello dear." Again, stamp that on some white cardstock with some black ink. And then I thought about covering up that little area where I got glue with a leaf, but I knew that I wanted a single one kind of floating down from the birch tree, I guess, kind of like falling leaves. Also feeling like it matched the stencil of the falling leaves on the background. So I decided to just use a white eraser, and that came right off. You can also use an adhesive eraser to get that off as well. So here's a look at both of the cards. Here's a color map with all the colors that I used for the coloring today. Don't forget to head on over to the Heffy Doodle blog to see pictures up close. Thanks for joining me. I had fun making these 2 cards. I hope that you're all doing well. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button, and I'll see you really soon in the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye.